What's up everyone, John from Beyond AR TV. I'm here with Mark, aka Spectrum Pulse.
What's up, folks?
What are you doing in North Carolina, Mark?
I'm basically on a road trip across the United States and meeting a bunch of different YouTubers, filming a bunch of vlogs and all sorts of chicanery around that idea. And we're here for 7 on Sundays with John and
of course you, Mark.
Yeah, exactly.
So today we're talking about 7 one-hit wonders. Those bands and artists that just really never managed to capitalize on the initial success that they saw. You know, whether it be just a viral trend or just a song that seemed like they were going to be the next big thing and then they just kind of fluttered out.
And some of them are more painful than others, because we like to hope that some of these bands could have had a little bit more staying power going forward, and I don't know what the hell happened.
Yeah, some of them just dropped the ball, whether it be marketing or just they took too long to follow it up. But anyways, we'll go through these. I'm picking 4, Mark's giving 3. We'll give some commentary and insight to those. Let's go ahead and start with my first pick. Stacy's mom has got it going on. Did you know that, Mark?
Yes, I know. I did know that.
Did you watch that music video when you were a kid?
Only a little bit, but I think it came on when I was like 13, 14, so prime territory for watching, of course.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing it on MTV. You thought, Fountains of Wayne, this is the next big band. They have the sound, you know? Like a lot of bands like that, like the Click 5 and Fountains of Wayne were popping up.
Well, the thing with like Fountains of Wayne is that they were just a pretty phenomenal little power pop band, and like they had that one hit that pretty much came out of nowhere. I actually probably prefer Mexican Wine and all kinds of time from that album, but Stacy's Mom is just electric in capturing that mood. It's almost so goofy, you have to love it, especially with that key change.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how can you hate that as it's just going through it? Because it's not one of those songs that takes itself seriously. It's one of those songs that just kind of focuses on being like a young kid and you're obsessed with this older woman that you're never going to have. So it's like every kid's fantasy, I guess, kind of coming to life.
Well, you never know. Like, he goes on 10 years down the road, he could potentially have hooked up with Stacy's mom.
Exactly. I mean, Dad's out of the picture.
Exactly.
I mean, he's just going to pop right in. And didn't they have a follow-up album that didn't get much, Black Holes or something like that didn't get any traction whatsoever?
Well, the thing is that I don't even think that as a power pop band they were ever looking to get mainstream traction, but I think it was more of a fluke that it happened, and I think they seem pretty comfortable in the indie scene. Sort of fall in the vein of like a band like Hanson these days, which I'm okay with.
Yeah, that's true. They're not really totally gone away, but at the same time, you're not going to see them or hear them on top 40.
Look at me, just called to say that it's good to be alive in such a small world. I'm all curled up with a book to read. I can make money, open up a thrift store. I can make a living off a magazine. I can design an engine, 64 miles to a gallon of gasoline. I can make new antibiotics. I can make computers survive aquatic conditions. I know how to run the business, and I can make you want to buy a product.
This is going to be interesting, and mostly because this is the sort of hit that comes out in 2006, right in the peak of where American culture was a little bit more comfortable with political material crossing onto the radio. But I think it was more here because of that iconic rap that just gets stuck in your head, and he's nodding along because he knows exactly every single word.
Every word is going in my head right now. I can make computers survive aquatic conditions. I know how to run the business, movers, shakers, and producers. Me and my friends understand the future, Mark.
Apparently. The funny thing is that song just basically came out of nowhere. It was, again, I'd say electric, but it basically blew up on that final third.
Oh, it's huge. It's one of the biggest bombastic endings that you'll ever hear.
And it comes in, it's the perfect flip from you actually have somebody who can do everything, but seeing how that culture then perpetuates a tyrant. Gee, you wonder how that's relevant in 2017. Maybe it's time for a Flobots comeback.
Exactly. I mean, we were just talking about, like, what else did the Flobots do? I knew the song with Rise Against that they did with Tim McElrath, and I don't know beyond that what they've done.
I know they retweeted me when I talked about them on Twitter once.
Oh, well, at least they're still active on Twitter, right?
Yeah, that's gotta mean something. So let's hope that we hear more from Flobots in the future. I wouldn't mind it.
This is why I'm hot. I don't gotta rap. I could sell a mill saying nothing on the track. I represent New York. I got it on my back. Niggas say that we lost it, so I'ma bring it back. I love the dirty, cause niggas show me love. The ladies start to bounce as soon as I hit the club.
Sticking with the theme of hip-hop and rap from that last track, we're carrying over into something that we're not exactly surprised died off, I don't think. This Is Why I'm Hot by Mims.
It's crunk. You know what? I'm actually okay with this song, and I was okay with most of this crunk growing up. A lot of it's not good, but you have a song like this, This Is Why I'm Hot, it gets stuck in your head. The verses are not great, but were Crunk's verses ever great?
No, not necessarily, unless you're talking about Get Low by Lil Jon and the East Side Boys.
Absolutely.
And the Ying Yang Twins. I mean, bow down to the classics.
But this was 4 years later. This was Crunk on its last stage. This is the era of Laffy Taffy and Crank Dat.
Yeah, this was 07, right?
Yes.
I believe. Yeah, right around 07. I was in high school, and of course, being the edgy high school kid that liked rock music, I listened to This Is Why I Rock, the remix. Did you ever hear that?
I did not know.
According to him, I'm beautiful, incredible. He can't get me out of his head. According to him, I'm funny, irresistible. Everything he ever wanted.
This song basically came out of nowhere. In 2010, let's be honest, we were in the middle of the club boom. There was no real appetite for rock on the radio, at least not when it comes to the mainstream radio. And yet, out of nowhere, we get a female guitarist who leaps to the forefront with According to You. And I actually like the barbed nature of the lyrics. She showed off a sort of visceral presence that really we could do with more just in terms of rock in mainstream culture in general. And then sadly, she just kind of fell off.
Yeah, it tapered off, and I hated that because I loved like how captivating of a guitar player she was, and
Oh,
even
yeah.
her vocals. I mean, there's a guitar solo that just burst out on that track. It's something that, even though I haven't heard the song that much in the past few years, it's still from time to time something that you think about, and you're like, what happened to her?
Well, the thing is that she actually did put out an album back in like 2013 that I covered on my blog. This is before even YouTube. And you know what? I think you can make the argument that the songs just weren't there in terms of the writing. She might have been better with a full backing band behind her or something that a little bit stronger songwriting behind her. I've heard she's been doing some session work now, and maybe that's for the best for her, but again, you know what? Get her with the right band, with the right songwriters. I'd like to see her make a comeback. We could use a few more guitar solos right now on the radio.
Please, when not Kesha can't carry the entire weight herself.
Back off, I'll take you on. Headstrong to take on anyone. I know that you are wrong. Headstrong, we're headstrong. Back off, I'll take you on. Headstrong to take on anyone.
This is one you're going to have to handle on your own. I do not know this.
All right, up next we have Headstrong by Trapt. I mean, if you played football, if you played any kind of sport whatsoever growing up, or you ever went to a sporting event, or you watched an action thriller starring Jason Statham that came out in 2003, then you probably are familiar with this song. Back off, I'll take you on. Headstrong to take on anyone.
No, it doesn't raise a bell. In terms of the rock music I was listening to, as I said it a number of times, I went to progressive metal and like symphonic metal, but this is not in my wheelhouse. I will freely admit that, but hey, if it's got genre riled up, I'm sure there is something to it.
You know what, Mark? I mean, let's just push all of that aside because Trapt were the band that were doing things differently. They were putting the edge on edgy. They were putting the sharpness in sharp lyrics. They had the biting curb stomp of Papa Roach and the fierceness of... I can't even finish that sentence. This song was huge. It took over mainstream rock. It took over alternative rock. Like I said, it took over every sporting event. It was like the centuries before hard rock wasn't cool.
So what the hell happened to them?
Well, they actually are back, believe it or not. They came out with a record called DNA that came out in 2015 and did not chart so well. I believe it charted around the bottom 100s of the Billboard 200 charts. And they did have a single that peaked at the very, very bottom of the rock airplay off of that record, but let's just say that they're not exactly thriving anymore, and they're still kind of sticking to that same formula.
You know what? I kind of admire that to some extent. You have a band that has the formula, established formula, you push it to where it works, and if you can't ride it out that much longer, hey, maybe just a legacy act. You're always going to need those extra stages for the sound for a major music festival, so can't help.
That's true, and I will say this, they've got one song that I really, really love. It's called Waiting by Trapt. Headstrong, sure, everybody's probably heard it, you're sick of it, but look up Waiting by Trapt. That was the one that should have crossed over.
I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down.
Okay, if you're making any list of one-hit wonders, especially coming from my point of view, having a little bit more of that punk background, you have to talk about Chumbawamba and their big hit, Tub Thumping. Of course, it was their follow-up single that's become a little bit emblematic on my channel. Watch Billboard Breakdown, you understand why. But the thing with Tub Thumping is that it was the crossover that nobody understood, and yet so many punks called the mainstream sellout. The funny thing is that Chumbawamba were a punk band for a good 30 years. They transitioned from the hardcore scene, they even kind of dabbled in the oi scene, then they went to rave dance rock, they went to punk, and then they went to even more of a pop scene. They signed to EMI basically to troll them, as the punks should do. And then from there, they bounced over to folk music, and their final project was a musical that actually got halfway decent reviews. But the funny thing is, one thing that I always want to stress with this song is that most people tend to crop off the very beginning, where it typically is typically focused. People say Chumbawamba, it doesn't mean anything, it's meaningless, it's a drinking song, except it opens up, I thought it mattered. I thought the music mattered, but it's now all bollocks, because whatever but the people matter. It's basically calling out the fact that the album is satirizing it and using that music to make that point.
Right, it's anthemic in a way that also just embraces, I guess, the sarcasm of the whole thing that was going on.
Cause you had a bad day, you're taking one down, you sing a sad song just to turn it around. You say you don't know, you tell me don't lie, you were gonna smile and you go for a ride.
You had a bad day, you're taking one down, you're singing that song and you're turning around.
To our number one pick, Bad Day by Daniel Powter, our favorite bald man on the charts that should have never crossed over probably in the first place, but here he is years later still performing it at Olympic ceremonies and other things like that. I looked into it a little bit.
It was the number one song on the Billboard year-end charts in 2006. This song was inescapable, and it personified that sensitive white guy with acoustic guitar and piano that would bring to you James Blunt. It gave a little bit more life to whatever John Mayer had in the tank, probably brought in what Jason Mraz would do in the future. And honestly, the lyrics kind of suffer for it a little. I can't say I'm a huge fan of Bad Day, but again, that hook sticks with you. That bridge has some real swell to it. I have to respect this song, at least to some extent.
I like that. Like you said, the bridge really does take off. It kind of accelerates that part. It dips into a different tone vocally and kind of takes a little bit of a turn. But I just think a lot of people at that time, I don't know, maybe we were at the end of the Bush presidency. We were starting to all have bad days ourselves.
Yep.
So it took a little bit of a dip there, and Bad Day, as a result, took over the charts. I mean, you just didn't go anywhere without hearing this song. And it got aggravating to the point where I hated anybody who would even remotely consider playing a song like this. And then, of course, like you said, it paved the way for other people to really just come into the mainstream and take over.
And the funny thing is, I don't know what else this guy has done. Like, I've covered albums from guys who followed in a similar adult alternative vein, like Gavin DeGraw, and they don't have much staying power either. But at the same time, you have to wonder, whatever happened to Daniel Powter? Like, he said he's performing this, he still is riding out this single 11 years later.
He's still promoting that one single. Alright, with his brand new single, Bad Day, that came out 10 years ago.
With the Trapt remix.
Bad Day, featuring Lil Uzi Vert. Oh God. God spare us all.
That is a bad day.
Thanks for watching this episode of 7 on Sunday, guys. If you haven't checked out Mark, aka Spectrum Pulse, we will link his channel and his Twitter down below. Don't forget to drop a like on the video. And other than that, I'll see you next week for another episode of SOS. You can see last week's episode right here. Click right below me for Mark's channel and another recent video over there. Socials in the description, and I'll see you very soon right here on Beyond AR TV.
Bye.